I'm David Oak, a voice of the resistance, albeit a strange and silly one. Today's post, Barry Manilow sings in a can. He came and he gave without taking. As a journalist, I try not to go into stories with preconceived notions. Sure, if I'm going to a city council meeting where the council is going to be discussing infrastructure, I have a pretty good idea what the main story will be, but I try to let the facts take the story where they will. That's true when I do humor, too. I may start off with a premise and conclusion in mind, but sometimes end up going in a completely different direction. Like the Barry Manilow concert I went to 2 weeks ago. As a child of the 70s, I was sure it was going to be a great big cheese fest, complete with a conga line and disco dancing and all that the era brings to mind. In fact, that was about the only reason I went, other than the fact that I was able to get really cheap tickets. I mean, really, really cheap tickets, because I know a guy. Okay, maybe it wasn't a guy. Maybe it was my wife who spotted them on one of our favorite bargain websites. In fact, it was such a good deal, we figured we'd pick up 2 extras and invite some friends along for the Kids Fest. Unfortunately, I couldn't give them away. And then my wife came up with a religious reason she couldn't go, and suddenly I was on my own. Nothing I said would sway her, not even my telling her that I don't want to walk without you. Instead, she responded by offering to give me a ride to the light rail station. I said I'd see her somewhere down the road. A lesser person might have given up, but I was committed to the bit. So I bravely took the monorail to the Seattle Center Coliseum Key Climate Pledge Arena, or whatever the hell it's called these days, and just barely got there before the concert started, which prompted me to happily proclaim to the empty seats beside me, "It looks like we made it." Given my late start and my need to grab dinner on the way, though, I thought, it's a miracle. But then I realized that I had just gotten there in time for the opening act, seeing comedian Dennis Blair, who was quite good, actually, especially his bit about a conversation between Ozzy Osbourne and Bob Dylan. Keep in mind, this was 2 weeks before Ozzy Osbourne died. He also threw in Chewbacca, which made it funnier. But that's another story for another time. Blair was so funny, he threw me off my game so much that I was still trying to get the feeling again when Barry came out. At least, I thought it was Barry, but it turns out I may have been wrong. Either 80-year-old Barry had had a lot of work done somewhere in the night, or I was looking at a little old Jewish lady with spiky hair. Who knows? These days it could have been both. Then the singing began, and I was confused all over again, because the singer sounded just like the Barry Manilow I remember from the 1970s. That's the good news. The bad news is that in the 70s, I mostly listened to Manilow on AM radio stations played on a tinny car radio. So there's that. At this point, it's important to know that my hearing isn't always so great, or so my wife tells me. At least I think that's what she's saying, but I'm not sure because she doesn't talk loud enough. I mention this because I'm not usually one to comment on sound quality. If I can hear it and I can understand what the singer is saying, I'm good. All of which is to say that the sound quality would have to be pretty noticeable for me to comment one way or the other. Once Barry began singing, I thought of the old prank kids used to make to drugstores, prank phone call, I should say. Kids used to make to drugstores and tobacco shops when I was growing up. It went something like this. Prankster, do you have Prince Albert in a can? Store clerk, why, yes, we do. Prankster, well, let him out. He's suffocating. This is what passed for humor in those days. What do you want? It was before internet memes. And now Barry Manilow was in a tin can, and there was no one to let him out. He seemed to be breathing just fine for an 80-year-old Jewish woman with spiky hair, but it was painful to listen, so much so that I almost left. But I felt I owed it to my readers. After all, this one's for you. I stayed and stayed and I stayed because I was ready to take a chance again. I also stuck around not only because it had all the appeal of a train wreck, but also because I hoped it would get better. It didn't. Even now, I still can't get over it. In fact, it depresses me so much, even as I write about it, that I feel like running away to drown my sorrows. Which do you think would be better? A weekend in New England or a night at the Copacabana? At this point, the only way to end this is with one of those big drum solos that you find at the end of almost every Manilow song, and the words of Ray Stevens' parody song, I Need Your Help, Barry Manilow. I need your help, Barry Manilow. I'm miserable and I don't know what to do. Sing me a song, sing it sad and low. No one knows how to suffer quite like you. I need your help, Barry Manilow. Your songs can really comfort the unlucky. Sing me a song, sing it sad and low. I wish I didn't have to feel so yucky. And I wish I didn't have to feel so yucky. I'm David Volk, a voice of the resistance, albeit a strange and terribly singing one.